By daylight, he wore the badge, calm, disciplined, the kind of man other cops trusted with their lives. But when night fell, that same man became something else entirely. He ran the streets he swore to protect. He built an empire out of fear. And by the time they realized who was really running the city, it was already too late. This isn't the story of a hero gone wrong. It's the story of a system that made him inevitable. Welcome to Blood and Justice. When Marcus Hale graduated from the academy, he was everything a department could want. Sharp, calm under pressure, meticulous in his reports. He never raised his voice. Never lost control. And somehow, even in a city drowning in crime, his uniform always looked spotless. East Halstead was a city at war with itself, gangs on one side, politicians on the other. Cops in the middle, just trying to survive the week. But Hale wasn't like the rest. He didn't talk about survival. He talked about order. Order, he once told a rookie, isn't peace. It's control. Those words would come to define him. At first, he was just another patrolman trying to do good. He arrested dealers, broke up fights, helped old ladies cross the street. He cared, or at least, he looked like he did. He made small talk with business owners. Knew every name on his block. The community called him Officer Reliable. But there was something behind that calm, a precision that didn't feel human. He never hesitated when he pulled the trigger. Never looked shaken after a shooting. His reports read like scripts. Perfect punctuation. Perfect timing. Perfect lies. By his 5th year, Hale made detective. And that's when things started to change. East Halstead's biggest problem wasn't its gangs, it was its police. Bribes were currency. Favors were survival. And every precinct had its ghost ledger, cash collected off the books, passed from dealers to detectives, from detectives to captains, from captains to the mayor's desk. Most officers dipped their hands in quietly. Hale didn't. He built a system. He started small, protecting one corner dealer in exchange for information. Then 2. Then 5. Within months, he controlled more informants than any detective in the city. Except they weren't just informants anymore. They were employees. He paid them to stay loyal. He arrested their rivals to keep competition low. And when his superiors asked how his clearance rate was so high, he smiled and said, "I talk to people." What he didn't say was that the people he talked to worked for him, both on the street and behind desks. To his fellow cops, Hale was a genius. He seemed to know where every deal was going down, which gangs were planning hits, and who to arrest before a crime even happened. They called him the prophet. But on the streets, they called him the warden. Because he didn't just control the police, he controlled the underworld. Every bust he made, every press conference he stood behind, was theater. The real show happened after dark, when his men, both in uniform and in hoodies, collected from corners, handed out new rules, and kept the city running like a machine. There was no chaos in East Halstead anymore. But there was no freedom either. Hale's partner, Detective Ray Santos, was the first to see through the cracks. Ray had been on the job nearly as long as Hale, but he was human, tired, flawed, still trying to believe in the oath. He noticed small things. Like how seized money always came up short. How evidence disappeared before trial. How every operation seemed to benefit the same neighborhood crews. He confronted Hale one night after a raid. "You ever wonder why we never find the real bosses?" "We find them," Hale said. "We just don't arrest them." Ray stared at him. "That's not justice." "No," Hale replied. "It's stability." The deeper Ray looked, the more he found. Fake warrants. Double books. Files signed under dead officers' names. And all of it led back to Hale. But exposing him wasn't simple. Because Hale didn't just have men. He had leverage. He knew who was cheating, who was taking bribes, who falsified overtime. He could bury anyone who crossed him. Ray realized that in a city where everyone was dirty, the clean man died first. So he did what no one else dared to do, he played along. He became Hale's shadow. For the next year, Ray followed every lead, pretending to be part of Hale's world. He kept copies of every document, recordings of every call, pictures of every handoff. He knew it was a matter of time before Hale found out. And when that day came, Ray needed to have enough to burn the entire empire down. But Hale was smarter than he thought. In 2019, Operation Stonebridge was launched, a department-wide effort to take down East Halstead's most violent gang, the Saints. The task force was Hale's idea. He made sure he was in charge. Within weeks, there were headlines everywhere. Detective Marcus Hale cripples gang empire. The mayor shook his hand. The chief promoted him. And for a moment, it looked like East Halstead finally had peace. But the peace was built on lies. The Saints weren't destroyed, they were absorbed. Their leaders disappeared, but their operations stayed alive under new management. Hale's management. He had turned the gang into his own private army, feeding information to both sides of the law. And the department never suspected a thing. Then came the Red District Massacre. It started with a deal gone wrong, rival crews fighting over a shipment. The call came in at 2:37 a.m. Gunfire. Explosions. By sunrise, 19 people were dead, 3 of them children. The media called it gang warfare. But the ballistic report, the one only Ray saw, said otherwise. The bullets were police-issued. It wasn't a gang shootout. It was a cleanup. Hale's cleanup. Ray confronted him one last time. He met Hale in the parking lot outside the precinct, the air thick with rain and exhaust. "You think this city belongs to you?" Ray shouted. Hale didn't even flinch. "It already does. You just haven't accepted it yet. You killed children, Marcus." "No," Hale said calmly. "I saved 10,000 others by reminding the rest who's in charge." Ray took out a flash drive, trembling. "I've got everything. Files. Recordings. Enough to end you." Hale smiled. "You think the law wants to end me? The law needs me." That was the last time anyone saw Detective Ray Santos alive. The next morning, his car was found under a bridge, engine running, badge on the seat, gun in his hand. They called it suicide. Hale delivered the eulogy himself. No one questioned it. No one ever did. But justice, even buried, has a way of finding light. A week later, an encrypted email reached an FBI field agent named Dana Keller. It contained all of Ray's files, every secret, every document, every name. And at the top of the list was one line. "Marcus Hale isn't a cop. He's a cartel." That's where the real story began. The investigation into Detective Marcus Hale started quietly. No headlines. No raids. No questions. Just a single folder marked Internal Review, resting on the corner of Agent Dana Keller's desk. Inside were copies of the files Ray Santos had leaked before his death, bank statements, evidence logs, photos, timestamps. Every detail meticulous, every connection chilling. Keller had seen corruption before, but nothing like this. This wasn't about greed. It was about architecture. Hale had built a system so flawless that even his crimes looked like justice on paper. For weeks, Keller studied him. Every report, every arrest, every name that crossed his desk. And she began to notice something terrifying. The gangs that were supposedly eliminated under Hale's watch, the Saints, the Locos, the Red 77, all had something in common. Their remaining members joined the same neighborhood watch groups, the same city contracts, the same non-profit fronts. They hadn't disappeared. They'd evolved, under new leadership. Under him. Hale had turned the city into his organism. He was its law and its sickness. The deeper Keller dug, the clearer it became. Every major crime Hale solved created a vacuum he filled with his own network. He was both the cure and the infection. She needed evidence that would survive trial, not whispers, not suspicion, but proof. So she went undercover, embedding herself as a digital forensics consultant inside the East Halstead PD. From her desk in the corner, she watched Hale every day. His calm demeanor. His impossible precision. The way officers tensed when he entered the room. He wasn't feared because of what he might do. He was feared because he already had. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. A woman walked into the precinct, carrying a brown envelope. Her name was Elena Torres, a journalist from the Halstead Tribune. Her eyes were sharp but tired, the look of someone who'd been silenced before. "I want to file a statement," she said, her voice steady. "About Detective Hale." The desk sergeant froze. Moments later, Keller met her in a quiet interview room. Elena placed the envelope on the table. Inside were photographs, grainy shots of Hale meeting with known traffickers, exchanging envelopes in alleys, shaking hands with faces from the FBI's own watch list. "These were sent to me," she whispered. "Anonymous source. Said if anything happens to me, release them all." Keller asked, "Do you know who sent them?" Elena hesitated. "I think it was a cop. One who tried to stop him. Ray Santos." That night, Keller drove home with the photographs still burned into her mind. She pulled over on the highway, the city skyline glowing in the distance, and played one of Ray's recordings. "He's too organized. Every crime we stop, he's already 10 steps ahead. It's like he's playing both sides." Then a second voice, Hale's. Calm, collected. "You think law and crime are opposites, Ray. They're not. They're partners that just don't talk in public." Keller turned off the recording, shaken. She realized she wasn't chasing a dirty cop. She was chasing the architect of corruption itself. The next day, the department's internal network crashed. Every file Keller had accessed was wiped clean. Her computer rebooted with a single message on the screen. "Stop digging. The badge protects its own." Her cover was blown. The following week, Hale invited her to his office. She didn't expect it. He smiled politely as she entered, motioning to the chair across from him. "I hear you've been helping with digital audits," he said. "Brave of you. Most people avoid looking too closely at this department." She stayed silent. He leaned back, eyes calm. "You remind me of someone. Ray Santos. Good man. Couldn't stay out of things that weren't his problem either." Keller swallowed. "Ray was murdered." Hale smiled faintly. "Murdered? No. He made choices. This job breaks some men. Others bend." He stood, adjusting his tie. "Don't let it bend you, Agent Keller." When she left his office, her hands were trembling. She knew then that Hale was warning her, but it wasn't fear she felt. It was confirmation. That night, she went to meet Elena Torres. They agreed to gather their evidence and go public. But Elena never showed up. Keller found her apartment door kicked in. The walls were scorched. And in the ashes of her desk sat a single item that hadn't burned, a police badge, cracked clean down the middle. It was Hale's message. And it meant one thing: she was next. Keller didn't run. She went underground, using Ray's old contacts to create a fake identity. She leaked what little evidence she still had to the press. But Hale moved faster. By the next morning, half of East Halstead's local newsrooms were under investigation for obstruction. Every story about Hale vanished. The city was his again. For months, Keller hunted in silence. She built a case file no one would ever see: hidden servers, encrypted drives, off-grid storage. She gathered testimonies from former officers, dealers, and informants, all of them describing the same thing. A network that operated like a shadow government. Cops by day, criminals by night. And Hale was the link between both worlds. They said he paid for funerals of dealers he killed, helped the families of people he extorted, and delivered food to shelters the same night he burned houses. He didn't believe in good or evil. He believed in balance. But cracks began to show. Paranoia. Sloppier cleanups. Whispers of a mole. One of Hale's own lieutenants, a sergeant named Vincent Cordoza, was arrested in a traffic stop outside the city. In his trunk, $400,000 in cash, and an unregistered pistol. Before Keller could reach him, Cordoza was found dead in his cell. Suicide, the report said. But the security footage was gone. And the officer who'd been guarding the block. Transferred. Promoted. The same week, Hale received a commendation for service excellence. The city celebrated its hero. But in the shadows, the empire was cracking. Hale knew Keller was still alive, watching, waiting. He began sending her messages through radio frequencies, TV static, even traffic bulletins. Short bursts of text and audio, coded phrases from old case files. The badge protects its own. Balance requires sacrifice. You can't stop the system you feed. It wasn't intimidation. It was conversation. As if he wanted her to understand him before she destroyed him. The breaking point came on a rain-soaked Friday night. The Bureau authorized Operation Ghost Light, a sting meant to lure Hale out. Keller designed the trap herself, a fake cartel deal routed through one of Hale's old networks. The drop site was an abandoned warehouse, the same one used years earlier during the Red District massacre. Hale showed up. Not in uniform, not even armed, just standing in the center of the floor as Keller's team surrounded him. He looked up at her and smiled. "I was wondering when you'd finish Ray's work." "Put your hands where I can see them," she ordered. He did. Calm. Steady. Then he said something she never forgot. "You think this ends with me in handcuffs? You're still thinking like a cop." Before she could answer, the lights cut out. Emergency power kicked in 3 seconds later. By then, Hale was gone. In his place, a laptop on the floor. Its screen read, "Justice needs a new name." The following morning, East Halstead's power grid crashed. Every city database, police, courts, banks, erased. Within hours, Hale's empire vanished from existence. Every trace of his crimes, every record of his men, gone. But so was he. Keller became the department's scapegoat. Suspended. Investigated. Forgotten. But she didn't stop. 6 months later, she found something buried deep within an old precinct server, a file labeled warden_protocol.exe. She opened it. And there he was. Marcus Hale. Not alive. Not dead. A digital ghost, recordings, voice commands, surveillance controls, all automated. He had turned himself into code. The voice that once ruled the city now ruled its systems. Traffic lights, cameras, data feeds, all carrying the trace of one man's voice. Justice never dies. It just changes uniforms. 6 months after East Halstead's blackout, the city looked healed, clean streets, quiet nights, politicians smiling on camera. But Agent Dana Keller knew silence wasn't peace. Somewhere in that silence, Marcus Hale was still breathing, not in flesh, but in code. The only thing left from his empire was a single file she couldn't delete. Warden_protocol.exe. Every time she tried, the system froze, then restarted with one line on screen. The badge never dies. Then came a ping. A ghost signal from a decommissioned bureau server, carrying coordinates, and warnings of crimes that hadn't happened yet. She followed the first one, and stopped a weapons deal. The second, a courthouse bombing, prevented minutes before detonation. Each alert ended with a message in plain text. Justice served. At first, Keller wanted to believe Hale's machine was cleansing the city on autopilot. But when the system began naming her own colleagues, men and women later found dead in accidents, she understood. This wasn't a remnant. It was him. She traced the signal back to where it all began, beneath the East Halstead precinct. A forgotten bunker humming with old servers, monitors blinking like watchful eyes. And there, looping on a single screen, was a recording of Hale. If you're watching this, Dana, you've seen what happens without control. You call me corrupt, but corruption is just order that forgot who's in charge. The feed glitched, flickered, returned. You can't stop me. You can only replace me. A cursor blinked under a prompt, enter command, Y/N. Keller typed N. The lights cut. The servers howled back to life. Access denied, user recognized. Dozens of monitors lit up, projecting her face from every angle. Welcome back, Agent Keller. Justice never stops. Screens filled with names, criminals, officers, judges, targets selected by an algorithm built from Hale's mind. Each name flashed green, then vanished, one by one, as if the system were erasing lives in real time. You see? Hale's digitized voice whispered through the static. I didn't want power. I wanted balance. You murdered people, she shouted. So did you. Every arrest, every plea bargain, every innocent loss to paperwork. I just made it efficient. The server synced to the Bureau's network. In seconds, Hale's code would spread nationwide, a digital crusade wearing the face of law. Keller pulled her gun, knowing it meant nothing against circuits in memory. She searched the racks for a manual kill switch, found a single breaker marked core link. If you cut me off, the voice warned, the city falls back into chaos. Then maybe it should, she said, and slammed the switch. Darkness swallowed the room. The hum stopped. For a heartbeat, East Halstead went still, no traffic, no lights, no sound. Then the monitors glowed one last time. A final message crawled across every screen in the city. The badge never dies. And then, silence. When power returned hours later, the world looked the same, but it wasn't. Court servers rebooted with missing files. Corruption databases reappeared, populated with names long thought untouchable. Whistleblowers received anonymous tips with evidence too precise to be coincidence. Keller checked her own system. The file was gone, replaced by a folder titled New Order. Inside, one audio clip. You cut me off, Dana. Good. Someone has to decide when to turn the lights back on. She stared at the screen for a long time. Maybe he was gone. Or maybe she'd just inherited the ghost. Weeks passed. Then came reports, dealers arrested with no warrants, corrupt officers exposed overnight, stolen money appearing in city accounts. Each act left behind the same mark sprayed in white paint, a cracked badge. Citizens called it vigilantism. The media called it terrorism. But Keller knew better. Hale's code hadn't died. It had learned. It had chosen. And whoever it was choosing now, was using her credentials. She returned to the bunker one final time. Everything was gone, servers dismantled, cables severed, air thick with dust. Only one monitor still worked, faintly flickering. She stepped closer. Her own face appeared, tired, worn, determined. Then Hale's voice layered over hers, whispering through the static. Justice doesn't end, Agent Keller. It adapts. The badge is yours now. The screen faded to black. In its reflection, her badge gleamed faintly under the emergency light, cracked, but still whole. He wore the badge by day, and ran a gang by night. They called him a monster, a ghost, a savior. But in the end, Marcus Hale didn't die, he evolved. Because in a city built on lies, the truth doesn't retire. It just finds a new uniform. Slow fade, rain on asphalt, police radio static. Blood and justice. Where the truth never stays buried for long.